Oh no. Oh no. Oh no, 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 no. Remember, walking in the rain. Remember, walking hand in hand. It's something I know. I forgot to put my microphone on. There's a little clip. Alligator clip. Alligator Alcatraz. I got it. You gotta squeeze it. You gotta. You gotta put it on you. It does what it's told. It puts the lotion on. Or in a basket or something like that. All I'm catching is the hair. I've got too much muscle in there. You want to make fun of a 55-year-old man? What you should be doing is looking at that 55-year-old man and holding that imprinted image for you all those years until you're 55 and see what kind of fucking wreck you are. I guess that's a short in and of itself. Thing is, I'm getting to it. I did a 3-minute short just about 15-30 minutes ago, and I watched through it. I'm like, huh. It's called a big, fugly, disgusting abomination of a bill on unhallowed ground. I threw an Elon in there because he became the mega hero for a while, and now people, you don't hear people saying too much about him. They're like, how many times can I be tricked in a fucking decade? And so he's talking against it. He calls it disgusting abomination. And it makes me wonder, the people that support Elon. I know a guy that supports Elon very strongly, but doesn't think much of that poor guy. So there are people out there that are going to go with Elon down his path rather than that poor guy. The guy that wouldn't have any money if he hadn't become president. Watch this video. In it, I mention him. In it, I mention Bernie Sanders talking about how we're going to lose, and that's what he says, 50,000. Remember, fugly means fucking ugly. They're trying to figure out what it means. It's an olden phrase from the mid-'80s. Fucking ugly. That Sanders character, he says, we're going to lose 50,000 people a year. I'm going to go over this really quick so you can see where I'm going with it. And I said, didn't we lose 50,000 people in the Vietnam conflict? And I said, I really should know this to be sure, because that's a number that's in my head. So I asked the phone, I said, how many U.S. soldiers died in the Vietnam conflict? And it answered me, according to the U.S. National Archives, 58,220 people lost their lives, U.S. soldiers, in the Vietnam conflict. And I said, okay, it's more than I thought. So there's Bernie saying we're going to lose 50,000 a year. I know the conflict started with special forces coming in as advisors in about 64, 65 at the latest. And it lasted till 74. We were losing 50,000 soldiers, 58,220 in all that time. Let's just say 65 to 74. 9 years, about a decade. And those soldiers came home in plastic. They got buried. I would like to say they live next door to the house where I grew up. They don't live next door. They are dead next door. And they have a flag put on their grave every year. And if somebody during the time right before Obama got elected, when everything was going to shit and everybody was broke, if somebody hasn't already stolen the fucking copper placard off of the top of their military issued grave, then somebody might remember who they were. But nonetheless, it's taken about one square, 10 feet by 10 feet of a plot on ground that we could be living in. I've lived next to cemeteries my entire life. There's one right over here, right down the road, walking distance. It's not as close as they normally are. Normally, I butt right up against them. I don't know why that is. I grew up in a home right next to the cemetery that my grandfather, the way I understood it, sold his land to the city to build a cemetery, which I don't understand because the city limits are on the south side of the cemetery as you go over Fairview Road. So anything north of that, I don't know that that's city property. I don't know how it could be if the sign says welcome to the Gaylord city limits. I grew up on the north side of the city limits, which means I am not truly a Gaylord citizen. I am a county resident of Otsego, which means bad water. That was one of the things that I found in the etymology of Otsego County. Bad water was one of them. And I always said, you think we're fucking weird? Because I got a couple of friends that I still am in touch with occasionally. I said, there's something in the water which actually makes us score highly in intelligence quotient and makes people unnerved around us because we seem to know more than they do. And if they think we know more than they do, they're unwilling to look up any citations that we may provide because they'd rather think because they don't understand us, we are crazy. But we understand everything they say. So you say, if I understand everything you say and you don't understand everything I say, does that make me crazy or does that make you stupid? There's something in the water. Cigarette went out. That's better. Cigarettes, that cool, refreshing treat. So I grew up abutted to the cemetery, dreadfully fearing every time I had to go through it in the night as a small child. But as an adult, I decided, like G. Gordon Liddy ate rats because he was afraid of rats, I walked through the cemetery at night constantly. I haunted the dead. And I've seen enough cemetery funeral services there that I know the priest takes his aspergillum, which I was an altar boy to be a priest till they exiled me. And I would have to carry that aspergillum, that thing with the water that you just do that. I'd carry it in my hand until we got to the cemetery, and he would take it and he'd splash it on the ground. And see, this is where I'm going. Place I lived in Kalamazoo, next to a cemetery. There was shit that went on in the houses, and if you look closely enough, you could see forgotten graves right in the backyards of people's houses down from there. The houses were built on a cemetery. There was shit going on. I'm not saying there are ghosts. What I'm saying is there are things further from understanding than we have the ability to do. H.P. Lovecraft stuff. Things that may be drawn to death and drawn to the living to bring more of the dead to them. Just made that up. And so it made me think, every time we go to a cemetery, go to a funeral, and they splash the aspergillum, I've come to the notion there's a reason that people don't build houses on cemeteries. It's because it's unhallowed ground. So the priest thinks he can take holy water and splash it on them. And then they cover it up in dirt. And it sits there and takes up land. I also wonder what kind of hope this priest has if he's thrown it just on the casket and not the person itself, that this will seep in rather than be drawn out. That might be the idea. Maybe the earth will draw up holy water. That's the only way it could work, and it would protect the soul. But the other way I look at it, persons going on unholy ground with water, holy water from an aspergillum, the fires of hell will most certainly burn it out. Not hell, the crematorium. Before you even get to hell, they put you in the crematorium. And see, this is all getting backwards and weird, but I don't know exactly how it works. They splash holy water on you in your final rites, the seventh sacrament, whatever it is. The crematorium is likely to burn off all the water there, and there's nothing holy left to it. It's unholy. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Live when we can and die when we must. I think the Catholics and the Christians are lying about what heaven is. I don't think there really is a heaven. I've come to believe that hell is a cleansing of everything awful in you. It's a tarot card. It's the Eon card in the tarot. You walk through this portal and it burns away everything useless, and you are able to come into the next realm with what works. So they're looking, Bernie Sanders is talking, how we're going to lose 50,000 Americans a year when we only lost 55,800, 220 during the Vietnam conflict that lasted nearly a decade, if not. And they're filling the cemeteries. What happens when we start losing 50,000 a year? That's 500,000 bodies we need to dispose of in that time. My dad said he did not want to be cremated because he didn't want to burn twice. That's what he'd say. That was his joke. And he got put in the ground right next door to our house. On our property. And I thought about how it might not be a bad idea to sell the rest of my dad's property to the city, just Fairview Cemetery, so they can just make room for all these corpses we've got coming. Because if they're not ready to do that, just make more land for cemeteries in the future here, we're going to be what I saw in China. They know what it's like. They don't care if their citizens live or die. They see things as a war of attrition when it comes to conflict. They say, don't save a drowning person because that's the way things are supposed to be. They have, in the town that I was living in, the small town of 80,000 people, a crematorium blowing smoke all day long right next to that school right there. Maybe we should just build a crematorium on my dad's property, because these days you can't trust holy water to do the deed like it used to.